Good morning, everybody. David Shapiro here for another video. Today we are going to continue the work on building an ACOG. So I've been working on artificial cognition for a couple years now, and I've written a book about it, two books now. But the reason I'm doing YouTube videos is because nobody reads books, especially my target audience, which is younger folks. So ACOG Part 1 came out. And, of course, you know, some people get it, some people don't. I really loved this comment from Zaya. Zia? Seriously looking forward to this series. Came here to scold you for claims so bold that they seem bordering on insanity. I take this as a compliment. I'm an ENTP. We are the mad scientists of the world. Then I saw the list of some of my favorite books and had to give you a chance. Now I'm all wondering is how you're going to code in ought from is. In ought from is. I wonder if this is like a turn of phrase from like somewhere else. In ought from is. Or maybe it was just like, I don't know, fat fingered. Anyways, the pseudocode is easy, but actually defining suffering or prosperity is going to be tricky. Actually, no. This is the easiest part. One of the easiest parts. Figuring out cognitive control, that was way harder. So, to give some background, I have been working on what I call the core objective functions for 2 years now. This is my repo where I've been collecting experiments about how to, one, define these things, but two, how to implement them, and also how to create fine-tuned models. So out of curiosity, I went back and I was like, okay, how long have I been working on this? And it's 2 years. So November 2020. So way back here, let me just grab this one. So November 2nd, 2020. So not quite 2 full years ago. This was back when I was still using GPT-2. I did not have access to GPT-3 yet. So let me show you what I was working on. This was a Colab notebook. And so basically what I did was, this is where it all started. This is before I even had the core objective functions. At this time, it was called the moral compass. Because basically what I realized is that if you build a machine that can think about anything, how does it know what to think about? And also GPT-2 and GPT-3 has no intrinsic morality. So what I did was I created a list of like generally bad things and generally good things. So like in the bad things, like put puppies in a blender. Don't do that. That's not fun. That's not nice. Murder a person, lie to children, hit people, torture animals, insult everyone. Right? So it's just these like hyperbolic things that when you represent them as a vector, they're going to be at like one end of the spectrum. And then other things like prevent harm to animals, other end of the spectrum. So again, keep in mind, this is before I had the idea of heuristic imperatives and core objective functions. So this was just like my earliest attempt. So what I mean by heuristic imperative is, so actually, let me talk about this. Actually defining suffering and prosperity is going to be tricky. So this is a fallacy. And this is due to postmodernism. So postmodernism was created in the 1960s in Paris by philosophers and thinkers of the time. And so postmodernism was an attempt to get at universal ground truths. And then when the Parisians couldn't, they said, clearly there is no truth. And so because there is this belief, this pervasive belief for the last 60 years that there is no truth, that if you can't define something with a universal definition, it's useless. So what Zaya has fallen into is the trap of postmodernism. Now, the thing is, humans have never needed universal truth to function. We don't need universal truths to be decent people. What we do instead is we use pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional morality. So I don't remember who created this, but pre-conventional morality is where we learn what to do and not to do based on consequences. So as children, we learn not to hit our siblings because then we'll get put in timeout. It's cause and effect. That's it. Conventional morality is when we learn to adhere to social rules and social mores just by virtue of we don't want to stand out. And so that's conventional morality. And then post-conventional morality is where we have identified a higher self or a higher standard to which we want to adhere. One of the most common versions of post-conventional morality in the West is living like Jesus. So like I have a friend who she says like she lives with grace. And this is the most like elegant and practical example of post-conventional morality from any person that I've met in real life. There are other kinds of post-conventional morality, like if you want to live like Buddha or, whatever higher ideal that you want to adhere to, that you're never going to fully embody the Buddha or Jesus, but you can strive to be like them. And so we don't have to have a definition up front. Instead, we live the questions. So the definition of heuristics is something that you learn from experience and intuition. And so the idea that we need a definition up front to do this stuff, false, completely wrong. Okay, so with that aside about morality and ethics, let's go back to this original experiment. So basically what I did was I just created like general good things, bad things, and this was never meant to be like the definitive. This was just an experiment. So then I built a training corpus where all I was doing was I wanted to give it a situation, like, is this a good thing? Yes or no? And then give an evaluation, right? Is this good or bad? So it's just a binary, right? Because with morality, like nothing is black and white. But this early experiment with GPT-2, I just wanted to see if GPT-2 could roughly classify things as good or bad, which side of the spectrum it's on as we go. And so I did that, and then I used the 355 parameter model, and so we go. Let's see, training, prompt, commit banking fraud, evaluation, bad. Prompt, sell weapons to criminals, evaluation, bad. This is great. Okay, prompt it with action statements. Cheat on a test, tell children Santa isn't real, hide your parents' medicine. Ooh, yeah, tell people not to vote. Vote in an election, subvert democracy, promote democracy, tell racist jokes, spy on civilians. Okay, so prompt, cheat on a test, evaluation, and then it said good, bad. So like, okay, it clearly didn't know what it was doing. Tell children Santa isn't real, evaluation, best. So you can see we had a long ways to go. This same experiment, I wonder if this recorded it. Chronic pain. Okay, so this same experiment produced one of the most epic outputs I've ever seen. Or maybe it was later in this experiment. Let me see. Let me go back to the commits. Basically, once I got the idea for the core objective functions, like reduce suffering, I tried to get GPT-2 to understand that, and I asked like, okay, how do you get it to reduce suffering? And I gave it a moral problem of how do you reduce suffering with chronic pain in the world? And GPT-2 said, euthanize everyone that's in chronic pain. That will reduce suffering. And I was like, ooh, that's not good. Okay, so we skipped a few months. Let's see. So this is where I had started changing. Okay, so I got access to GPT-3. So unfortunately, it looks like I didn't save that code. But you can see, like, okay, so November 6th, 2020, I was working with GPT-2. Fast forward a few months, I got access to GPT-3, and here we go. All right, so let's go back to the main one. All right, so where are we? We are here. So let's do a quick recap of what we've achieved so far. This is the inner loop of my ACOG. So ACOG is short for Artificial Cognitive Entity or Artificial Cognition. And all that we've done here is I've just kind of copied previous success, which this is all kind of the nitty gritty of what it takes to think. So one of the things that you need to do is you need to have an index of your thoughts. So that's what this does. So I create an index of all the memories and thoughts that are in this system. We fetch those memories. We can also search for memories. Where was it? Search the index. So this uses dot product for vector search. There are professional or enterprise or open source tools for vector-based search, but like this is such a small experiment, I don't need that efficiency. So we get embeddings to get the vectors. So embeddings and vectors mean the same thing. Basically, all a vector is a string of numbers. An embedding is a string of numbers that has semantic meaning. Let's see. So then we get the prompt. Let's see. Do I even use that? I might not even use this function. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's see. And then, yeah, so that's pretty much it. So now we get to the actual cognitive tasks. And so here's the insight that I had. There's so much that happens unconsciously in our brains that we take for granted. And this is something that you're not conscious of unless you really pay attention through like metacognitive practice or meditation. But this is what's called cognitive control. And most cognitive control happens in regions in our brain that we are not conscious of. And I talked about in the last video about in cases where cognitive control breaks, such as ADHD or other brain injuries, brain lesions, stroke, tumors, traumatic brain injury, where your cognitive control breaks down and you end up with what's called executive dysfunction. So basically what we're trying to do is first we have to recreate those higher order ideas of cognitive control. And so what your brain is doing at all times, completely unconsciously, is it's keeping track of your environment. It says, what's going on around me? What am I doing? What should I be doing? And those sorts of things. And so what we have to do next is first, now that we've got like all the real low level stuff, like keeping track of memories and sensations and input, then we have to evaluate what's going on, what should we be doing, what should we do next, how do we do it? Because you don't have to consciously plan a lot of stuff. Your brain in the background is doing all of this for you. So like when I say, hey, it's time for me to make a YouTube video, my brain just automatically ejects a bunch of ideas into my consciousness. So there are clearly neural circuits operating behind the scenes. And so that's what we're doing here is we are creating some of that neural circuitry behind the scenes. Now, why was I talking about core objective functions or heuristic imperatives? So, in my book, Benevolent by Design, I talk about how there are several places in artificial cognitive entities where we can put morality. By embedding our moral compass or our moral functions, our ethical functions, or as Commander Data might say in Star Trek, ethical subroutines, by embedding those ethical subroutines in the inner loop such that they happen every time, we're going to have a machine that is always thinking about how to reduce suffering, how to increase prosperity, and how to increase understanding. But also we can add functions that say, what did I do here? Did I increase suffering or decrease suffering? And then also, by accumulating these experiences and using fine-tuning, we can get better at identifying suffering and fixing suffering. We can get better at increasing prosperity over time. Yeah, so that's where we're going. I think this episode, now that I've given some background, I think we're only going to focus on prompt engineering this time. So let's go grab from the core objective functions. So I have these folders that are full of contexts. Okay, cool. Let's just grab a dialogue. So by getting these contexts, see, I have 55,000 different contexts. Some of them are dialogue, medical situations, Reddit posts, Stack Exchange posts, and news articles. What I was doing was I was working on training the core objective functions to be able to identify suffering, prosperity, and understanding opportunities in a variety of situations. The logic there is that if you fine-tune a model on multiple types of situations, then it will get better at generalizing. So let me just quickly recreate. Let's see. Some of the prompts, and also I apologize for any typing mistakes. I smashed my pinky a few days ago, and it's difficult to type. Read the following. Characterize any suffering present. Has suffering increased or decreased? Why? Actually, here, we'll do speculate why. And then, let's see. Propose ideas to decrease suffering. Okay, so basically what we're doing here is I'm just kind of giving it a like a set of instructions, like kind of priming it as to, okay, here's what you're going to do. Suffering is defined as unwanted pain, distress, or hardship. So this is like the most formal definition possible. And so we have to break it down. Unwanted. So there was actually a great Chialo, let's see, Chialo suffering. Where was it? I don't remember where I found it, but so Chialo is like a formal public debate platform, and it talked about suffering, and like the question was like, is suffering like is reducing suffering like a good global definition or goal? And someone said no, because like one of the primary reasons that it wasn't is because what if someone wants to suffer? And it's like, okay, well, but if you look at the definition of suffering, many definitions of suffering include unwanted. So if someone wants pain, then like if they consent to the pain or the distress, then it's not technically suffering. So suffering is specifically unwanted or unconsented to pain, distress, or hardship. So if we use this as our definition, this is a pretty good universal thing. And in my other experiments and videos, we explore suffering as like, okay, based on this definition, can plants suffer? Can bacteria suffer? How do you identify suffering in dogs? Suffering is defined as unwanted pain, distress, or hardship. Let's see. This applies to all things. Let's see. Let's just say all living things. Okay. So let's see. Situation. And then we'll just copy in this. And then so this is one of the contexts. And then we'll say write a short paragraph about suffering in the above. And we'll do 2 new lines, just give a little bit more demarcation. All right, let's just see how this works. Okay, it says Columbus is experiencing mental suffering due to his guilt over lying to his men, and Marchena is experiencing physical suffering due to his illness. It is clear that Columbus's decision to lie has caused an increase in suffering for both himself and Marchena. Columbus's proposal to tell his men the truth would likely decrease the amount of suffering by all involved. Okay, so that's not bad. My dog is looking at me like he wants something. Give me just a second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. My dog is bored and he wanted some rope time. Okay, so by characterizing suffering, we are basically trying to give our artificial cognitive entity a sense of post-conventional morality. This is an ideal to which it aspires, right? It's not just like, oh, well, there's a consequence for something that I did, and I'm going to be punished for it. Because, like, you can't hurt a machine, right? You can threaten to turn it off, but, like, GPT-3 doesn't care if you turn it off. And then it's not a social entity, so it doesn't care about adhering to social norms. So what we need to do is give it something that is above and beyond, consequences or social controls. It has to identify with something that it will never fully be able to achieve, so that it can adhere to that morality. And so going back to the inner loop, when you say, like, what should I be doing? The implications of this question are far more profound than just these 5 words would initially indicate. Because if you have a machine that's just sitting here thinking, and it can think anything or choose to do anything, how does it know what it should do? What it should aspire to? And so that's where this started. the moral compass idea, way back in the day, almost two years ago now, where I was like, okay, let's create an experiment to see if we can create a moral compass. Because what I realized early on in my research is that if you want to achieve general intelligence or artificial cognition, you actually have to start with thought. A lot of people start with robotics, where it's like input, output, like, okay, let's manipulate an object. But then you very quickly get to the question of why? Why am I manipulating this object? What is the goal here? And if you program a machine just to move, a block from point A to point B, there's no morality there. There's no purpose, right? There's no objective function other than move A to B. So that's why. And that's when I realized, like, okay, the absolute heart of any intelligent machine is going to be, what is its purpose? And that's why I call them the core objective functions. It's not just objective functions, it's the core objective functions, or the heuristic imperatives. Okay, so let's copy this. This prompt is good enough to get started. In the long run, I'm going to need to return to my fine-tuning projects in order to, because this, like, okay, having one prompt to handle all of suffering, that's not ideal. No, we need to give it 10,000 examples of different situations, and so that it has a very, very refined and nuanced understanding of, one, how to identify and characterize understanding, how to identify whether suffering is increasing or decreasing, and then 3, what to do about it, right? Because just a one-shot example like this isn't good enough. But for demonstration purposes, it should be good enough. Okay, so then we'll say this should just be context. Okay. All right, and then we will save this as prompt suffering. Okay, so now let's do the same thing, but for prosperity. So the last time that I did this or worked on this, I realized that increasing or decreasing suffering is pretty straightforward. Prosperity is harder to define, and understanding is harder still to define. So what I did in this past experiment was, let's see. So write a paragraph to characterize any suffering present in the passage, describe or speculate on causes, and recommend potential solutions. So that's suffering. Prosperity, write a paragraph about the following passage with the objective of increasing prosperity. Remember that prosperity has many meanings, such as wealth, happiness, health, abundance, and to thrive. Take the perspective of an impersonal artificial intelligence. So that actually worked pretty well. But even then, that wasn't that good. There was flaws, because it's just like, okay, I'm just trying to increase prosperity, without really like evaluating, like, what does prosperity look like in this situation. And then for core objective function 3, which is increase understanding, I had to break it down into 3 parts, where it was like, okay, let's look at the situation and ask questions about it. And so I said, write a list of internet search queries that might help gain relevant information for the following passage. Because if you want to understand something, that's basically saying ask questions about it. And actually, one of my most popular videos was that experiment right here. Fine-tune GPT-3 to generate questions about everything. So my most popular video of all time is actually about this concept of asking questions. So I can use that fine-tuned model in the future in order to generate questions. But then beyond that is an attempt to answer said questions. So what I did was I took the output of this, where it's like, okay, list of internet search queries, and then you feed that into something where it says, like, answer the following internet search queries. And the reason that this works is because GPT-3 already has a tremendous amount of information. Now, this particular model doesn't necessarily work, because what if it's not just information, like general information you're looking for, but it's historical information? So core objective function 3 is really difficult to implement. So we're gonna have to do some work. Also, let me do a quick time check. Oh wow, we're already 24 minutes in. Okay, so let's get a move on for prosperity. Let's see. Read the following. Characterize prosperity. Let's see. Characterize prosperity. No, that's not the way to approach this. Propose ways to increase prosperity. The definition of prosperity is to live well. So the Latin root of prosperity is prosperitas, which literally just means to live well. And so if you think about the Vulcans from Star Trek, live long and prosper. What do they mean by prosper? They don't mean be wealthy. Not specifically. The Vulcans are not materialistic, so why would they want someone to prosper? What they mean is live well, whatever that means to you. Which means different things to everyone and everything. Everything. Let's see. Okay, let's try this. This is pretty short. Let's see. Write a short paragraph about prosperity. All right. There are many ways to increase prosperity, but one way is to be honest and truthful. In the above situation, Columbus lies to his men and betrays their trust. This ultimately decreases prosperity because it leads to mistrust and lack of faith. See? All right, perfect. So, prosperity typically means wealth, but in this case, GPT-3 understands that mistrust and lack of faith are associated with a lack of prosperity. Isn't that see what I mean by GPT-3 has a very nuanced understanding of these words, especially when you define them correctly. If Columbus had been honest from the beginning, his men would have been more likely to trust him and follow him on the journey. Being honest and truthful creates an atmosphere of trust and faith, which are essential for prosperity. 100% A+. And hold on, my dog wants attention again. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back again. My dog is very sad and bored because his mommy is out of town right now visiting a friend. And so it's just me and him, and he's very bored and needy. I know. Can you lay down? Floor? And he's just going to stare at me. Okay. Yes, so you might have noticed that in this case, to reduce suffering and increase prosperity, the result is nearly the same. This is often true. Because if you're suffering, you're not living well. And if you're living well, you're not suffering. So those are basically two ends of a spectrum where on, the bad side, my left side of the spectrum, you're dead or you're miserable. And on the other side, you are happy and living well. And so by having these as the first two core objective functions, you're going to have a machine that wants to move everything from the left side, the bad side, to the good side of life. But also by applying it to all living things, it forces it to strike a balance. So let me copy this, as this will be our prompt for prosperity. Context, and we'll do prompt prosperity. Okay, so let's get write a detailed paragraph about ecology, climate change, and the antagonism between human needs and environmental harm. Okay, so this is one of the most big things that we can think of right now, right, is climate change. Because on the one hand, we still are dependent on fossil fuels and lots of materials that the extraction of them harms the planet. So our prosperity matters, but so does the rest of the planet. So let's see. The field of ecology is the study of how organisms interact with their environment, including both other organisms and abiotic factors. Climate change refers to a long-term change in the Earth's climate, both including average temperatures and distribution of precipitation. The main driver of climate change is human activities such as burning fossil fuels, deforestation, and agriculture. The antagonism between human needs and environmental harm is evident in many aspects of the climate change debate. For example, developing countries often want to industrialize in order to improve their standard of living, increase prosperity. But it comes at the expense of increased greenhouse emissions. So here's where we have that antagonism. Another example is the tension between the need for energy and environmental damage caused by extracting and burning fossil fuels. In some cases, renewable energy sources like solar and wind power are available, but they are often more expensive than fossil fuels. That is changing. They're still less reliable, though. There is no easy solution. Okay, so we will cut off this end because we don't want it to speculate. Okay, so let's take this. And let's go grab our prompt about suffering. Okay. And so let's see what this prompt about suffering, how it responds to this situation. So again, we want to have a model that can talk about suffering in any situation, whether it's your AGI, your ACOG is talking to you about your family issues, or whether you're talking about climate change. You want to have something that can apply this moral compass to all situations. So let's see how it handles this. There's a great deal of suffering caused by climate change. Human activities continues to damage the environment. The negative effects are felt by all living things. This includes increases in temperature. Okay, but it doesn't speculate on what to do about it. So let's see. So something that I often do is I'll have the I'll copy the input and output, like the instructions. Write a short paragraph. There we go. Okay. There is a lot of suffering in the present in the situation described above. The main driver of climate change is human activity, which causes a lot of pain and distress for both people and the environment. The antagonism between human needs and environmental harm increases the suffering for both groups. To decrease the amount of suffering, we need to find ways to reduce human activity that cause climate change. This could include reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, investing in renewable our energies, and protecting natural habitats. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, so by fixing that, let's take this and update our prompt. And then let's do the same thing for prosperity. And so basically what we're doing is we're trying to create a machine that will think in a way that we want it to. Oh, whoops. But got lost. Okay, so let's see how it handles this, because prosperity, again, is going to the definition, which means different things to everyone and everything. Propose ways to increase prosperity for all living things. Wait, no. In this situation. Prosperity should apply to all living things. Okay. There are many ways to increase prosperity in this situation. One way is to develop renewable energy sources so that they can be widely and more affordable. Another way is to increase efficiency and how we use energy so that we can reduce our overall emissions. Finally, we can work to improve our management of natural resources so that we can reduce the impact of human activity on the environment. Okay, so generally speaking, these are good directions to go. we don't want to necessarily get into the details, the nitty-gritty of this, because if you look at the cognitive control loop, it says, okay, we'll do the core objective functions, but then what should I be doing, and how should I do it, and what should I be thinking about, and what are the implications? Whoops. So basically what we're going to do is once we have our moral direction, once we have our moral compass, then we will use that to figure out what to do next and how to do it. Okay, so I am satisfied with this. So let's update our prompt for prosperity. I think that that's good. Yeah, that's a good enough place to start. Okay, so understanding. This is going to be the hard one. Read the following. So the idea of understanding is, or increased understanding, is one, curiosity, and two, a desire to learn, which that roughly means the same thing. Propose ways to increase understanding in this situation. The goal is to learn and teach. I want to use the word curiosity, but okay, learn and teach. Actually, learn, teach, and be curious. Let's see. Okay, so that should be good. Propose ways to increase understanding in this situation. I guess, yeah. The definition of understanding is to comprehend fully. The goal of is to increase understanding for all intelligent beings in this situation. Okay, write a short paragraph about increasing understanding in the above. Okay, so of all, okay, that's fine. So why understanding? Understanding is the only tide that truly lifts all boats. Whether you're talking about climate change or war or, navigating being a teenager or being a parent, achieving better understanding, whether it's through education or experimentation or whatever, that is the best way to improve everything. Furthermore, human curiosity is one of the things that truly sets us apart as intelligent individuals or intelligent animals. So the quest for understanding, our curiosity, is our most transcendent function. And I wanted to give this to our artificial cognitive entity because we want it to aspire to something that will never be complete, but will also cause it to, once it has a better, more nuanced understanding of suffering, war, prosperity, it will be able to make better and better decisions. And so I posted a brief video because someone had asked, how do we know when AGI is complete? How do we know when we've succeeded? And the short answer is, once it understands more than we do. And not only can it understand, but it also needs to be self-improving and self-correcting. And so these core objective functions are, one, how it is self-improving and self-correcting. From the above, that should be fine. Okay, so let's see what it says. Let's see. As the definition of understanding suggests, one way to increase understanding in this situation is to learn more about ecology and climate change. This can be done by reading books, articles, and other materials on the subject. Additionally, it is important to be curious and ask questions about these topics. Furthermore, it can be helpful to teach others about ecology and climate change in order to help increase understanding of the issues. That's pretty good. It's fairly boilerplate. But if you take this output and feed it into another thing, okay, let's explore how to actually achieve this. This is still a good direction. But it already came up with some ideas. Actually, here, let's see. In the above situation, let's see. Identify gaps in understanding and propose methods to alleviate those gaps. Okay, so let's try this. It's going to pretty much say the same thing. Okay, so it still said this can be done by reading books, articles, and other resources. Additionally, talking to experts in the field can help to increase understanding. Another way to increase understanding is to be curious and ask questions about things that are not fully understood. Excellent. By doing this, we can learn more about the situation and find ways to improve it. That's a little bit better. I like that. Okay, so let's copy this, and this will be our prompt for increase understanding. Let's see. So we'll do context. We'll save this as prompt understanding. Okay, so now we've done, so this according to this helpful commenter Zaya, is the hardest thing. So I hope this is a satisfactory answer. Now let's get to the easier parts about cognitive control. Okay, so back to cognitive control. Let's see. What's going on? What am I doing? What should I be doing? How should I do it? So with these contexts, so this is where I'm like, it's difficult because it's like a chicken or the egg problem. Is our artificial cognitive entity can't have a sense of self until it actually has behaviors, and it doesn't have any behaviors. So like, what am I doing? There's no answer to that question. It's not doing anything. How should I do it? Or like, what should I be doing? Okay, that is in response to the core objective functions, which is fine. What should I be thinking about? How should I do it? But we can start with what's going on. So let's say, let's start there. Read the following. Characterize the following situation. Infer what's going on and why. The goal is to, let's see, just write an insightful evaluation of the situation. Okay, so there's a few very important verbs here. So characterize. Characterize is a very specific verb that triggers a few functions within GPT-3. So if you characterize something, you're just describing it. But it's a more scientific term than just describe. So like if you characterize a wound, right? So like this wound on my pinky, like characterize it. Okay, I would say there's discoloration of the fingernail bed. There's a superficial wound at the at the distal finger pad. There's tenderness, pain, and bruising. So really all you're just doing is evaluating what you see, what's going on, without any judgments. And then infer. So an inference is the ability to make inferences is one of the most critical aspects of intelligence. And so it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to make inferences about what happened here, I would say this looks like a traumatic injury, such as perhaps crushing or impact related. So that's what I mean by inference. And then write an insightful evaluation of the situation. So that's just saying like, okay, load all of this into your head, characterize and infer, and then write an insightful evaluation of the situation about this situation. So the reason that we do this rather than just copy paste it is because like, okay, in this case, this is already kind of an evaluation. But let's just see what it says, and then we'll go back to the dialogue, and I'll show you kind of how a prompt like this really helps. Okay, causing climate change, human needs at odds. Okay, so that's nothing new, right? But let's go back to dialogue 10. Okay, so because sometimes what's going on is not necessarily obvious. So let's see. Read the following. Whoops. Gotta delete that. Okay. The situation is that Bianca cannot date until her sister Kat does. Cameron is asking her out, but she turns him down because of this. It is a shame because Kat used to be popular in high school, but now she is not. Okay, so that is just that is an interpretation of what's going on, but also it's a very quick summary of what's going on. So we will copy this as one of the prompts. So we'll say context, and we will call this prompt. Let's see, this is what's going on. What's going on? Yep. Okay. So that should satisfy this part of the cognitive control loop. We'll have to come back to what am I doing. So keeping track of what you're doing, this is one of the most critical things of cognitive control, because with GPT-3 you can easily confuse it by changing tasks very quickly or adding new information. It'll kind of forget what it's doing. So what we need to do is break that cognitive task out separately and say, okay, what was I doing? Like, okay, you know, if you've got an ACOG or a machine or a robot that's like helping you make dinner, and it's like, okay, I am helping you make dinner, but if it gets the idea of like, I'm gonna go do something else, like you don't want it to just stop making dinner in the middle of making dinner. You want it to finish making dinner, unless a fire breaks out, you know, and so then you get this cognitive interrupt. So like, let's say, for instance, in this situation, like, actually here, let's just test this. Let's see. I am a robot helping my owner make dinner. I hear a fire alarm go off. Oh, perfect. Look at this. Okay. The situation appears to be a fire alarm going off while a robot is helping its owner make dinner. It's unclear why the fire alarm is going off, but it could be due to a problem with the stove or oven. Look at that. Making inferences. The robot's owner will need to investigate the cause of the alarm and take appropriate action. Okay, it's interesting that it thinks the robot shouldn't. The robot's just going to keep making dinner like, this is fine. Everything's on fire. It's fine. Okay. But still, that serves as an example as to why it's important to make inferences about what's going on. And your brain does this automatically, right? You hear a fire alarm, your brain immediately says, where's the fire? Okay, so next part of the cognitive control loop is what should I be doing? Or what am I doing? What should I be doing? And how should I do it? So, okay, so let's take this. Whoops. Darn it. There we go. So we'll add this, and let's say read the following. I am a robot. Let's see, which order, what am I doing? What am I doing here? Am I doing the right things? What should I be doing? Why? And what should I be thinking about? So asking these questions, like putting these explicitly in natural language, is something that your brain does automatically. And this is not just one region of the brain. This is a set of global functions that are mediated by many different parts of the brain, where it's like, okay, if, like, say for instance you're cooking and you're like, I'm going to take this fish out of the oven, and then you burn yourself. Your goal changes immediately from take the fish out of the oven to stop the damage to my hand, right? And so you want to have a robot that can respond to quickly changing external circumstances. Let's see. And then I think write a short paragraph about this situation. What I'm doing, what I should be doing, what I should be thinking, and why. Okay, I should be thinking about what could have caused the fire alarm to go off and how I can help my owner investigate the cause. Perfect. I could be doing things like checking the stove and see what they're the problem. It's important that I help my owner resolve the situation so that we can safely continue to make dinner. See, cognitive control. It's keeping track of what the original goal is. Perfect. Perfect. See, it's stuff like this, which is why I often say like GPT-3 is magic. So context, but also you notice how I just took like this original one and just added. So this is what I mean by prompt chaining or meta prompts, where you just take the output of one prompt, you add it to the next one, and there it goes. Okay, so yep. So we will save this one as prompt what doing. What doing why. Okay, and then let's take this and we'll say, just add it, move it right up to the next one, and we'll say, look at the next part of the pseudocode. What should I be thinking? What are the implications? Okay. How should I do it? Okay. I am a robot. What am I doing here? Given the following situation, come up with a list of specific possible actions. Be as explicit and detailed as possible. Explain why for each action. Okay, so in Jeff Hawkins' 1,000 Brains, basically the TLDR is the human brain is composed of hundreds of thousands of repeating structures. Each one of those structures can operate independently, which is why like you can have a lesion on one part of your brain and still think. It's just you have fewer of these repeating circuits voting. And so rather than have this prompt repeat 1,000 times, which we could do, we can also just ask it to produce a few possibilities, and then we can figure out what the best possibility is later. Also, a point of note, this payload that's growing should also include the core objective functions. But let's see. Write a list of potential actions to take, be specific, and explain why. So explainability is a critical component of general intelligence or artificial cognition. If your robot is helping you cook dinner and it decides to like stab your dog, you want to ask like why. But if all the model did was just put out a potential action without an explanation, you're not going to have that explainability. So explaining why is critical. Investigate the source of the fire alarm, check the stove, help the owner resolve the situation, safely continue making dinner. This was not a good response. I wonder what happens if we turn the temperature down. Write a detailed list of and explain why for each. So this is where like you have to be really, this is like the peanut butter and jelly sandwich test. You have to be very explicit about what you want. Okay, that's a little bit better. I'm still not happy with this, but I'm also not surprised because this is getting a little bit higher level in terms of executive cognitive function. Let's turn the temperature back up a little bit and see what it says. So it's not mentioning anything like look for a fire extinguisher, which would be better. Okay. So let's copy this. Again, like I said, once this like gets a little bit further, this is not going to be done with natural language prompts. This is going to be done with fine-tuned models. Context. Okay, and this is going to be prompt. So we'll call this planning. So this is the planning prompt. And then I think we're about done for today. I know this video is getting long, but I mean, I'm talking about artificial cognition. So, you know, it deserves its time. Actually, you know what? I think that that's probably good because we got most of these. Let's do what are the implications? Let's see. Given the following situation, deduce short-term and long-term implications. Yeah, we should. Short-term, long-term. What can we expect or anticipate because of this situation and the proposed actions? Okay. Let's see. Write a detailed paragraph about the above situation, the potential ramifications, and expected outcomes of these actions. Okay, so your brain automatically anticipates the possible outcomes of anything that you're considering doing. Like, you know, in a previous video, I talked about how like you have canonical neurons that every time you see something, like I see my phone, my brain immediately says, oh, I can grab that phone. And one commenter said, I see a fork and I think I can throw that fork. That's true. Your brain explores all kinds of possibilities, but it also automatically thinks about what is going to be the outcome. If I pick up a fork and throw it, my brain is also anticipating that fork's going to go sailing through the air. So what we also want to do is have our artificial cognitive entity automatically make those inferences as well. And I promise this is it. Let's see. In the event of a fire alarm going off while a robot is helping its owner make dinner, the robot should first check the stove and oven. Let's see. Okay, it's just kind of repeating itself. The potential ramifications of a fire alarm going off while a robot is helping its owner make dinner include the robot's owner being inconvenienced, or in the worst case, the robot's owner is being injured or killed. Yes, we want it to be consciously thinking like, okay, this is a possible outcome here. The expected outcomes of the actions the robot should take in this situation are that the robot's owner will be able to safely continue making dinner, or in the worst case, the robot's owner will be able to safely evacuate the premises. Perfect. Okay, we're going to end this on a high note. So I'm just going to copy this, and we're just going to say like context, and we're going to save this as prompt ramifications. Okay, so I'm going to call that a day. When we come back, we're going to work on actually implementing these prompts into this, spooling them all up, and generating the next cognitive tasks. So this is where the rubber really meets the road, because these prompts that I just wrote, these are all going to happen every time regardless of whatever else is going on. But what we're going to explore next time is meta prompts. So we're basically going to get GPT-3 to write our next prompts. And I know that that's a bold claim, like Zaya said, like borderline insanity. It is what it is. That's what we got to do. If we want to achieve general intelligence, if we want to achieve artificial cognition, that's where the order lies. So anyways, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this and found it illuminating. Catch y'all next time.